Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are in the chapter, The Evolutionary Process, Ascent and Integration. We'll begin again with the summary of page 737.
Today we have to start from these gulfs appear deeper. But to get the continuity, we'll see what he's saying in the previous para. Also, the question of evolution is like this. There are many stages of evolution. There are some who say there is no evolution. There is just a random mutation of cells and different forms are produced. That's one theory. Another theory is that there is evolution, but there is no teleology. It is not going towards any particular goal. It is just going on. Then there is a Christian theory that God created all the forms at one time. No question of evolution. He created dogs, cats, animals, camels, lions, one time.
More the Christian theory.
This is the one that
Yes.
God created all the creatures.
Yes.
And he was satisfied.
In 7 days.
Yeah. In 7, and he was satisfied. Okay? So, that completely eliminates the theory of evolution. In the ancient Indian idea, there is a theory of evolution in the concept of Dash Avatara. Okay? You can clearly see that there is a gradation. But it was never developed fully. It was never developed fully, the concept. Then we come to the scientific theory of evolution in Charles Darwin. But there the evolution is only of biological forms, living creatures. Okay? But Sri Aurobindo's evolution is not so much the biological forms, he does not deny it, but it's an evolution of consciousness. That's a basic difference. So you can see all these theories, and Sri Aurobindo is now explaining how the evolution in his concept, in his way of thinking, what is the process. So he has given us a hint right in the chapter heading itself, Ascent and Progress. Ascent and Integration. So, what has ascended from the lower is integrated into the higher. It is not rejected. That's what he is saying. For instance, from matter has come out life, but life, when it is appearing, it is not rejecting matter. It's in material forms that life is entering. So this is an interesting concept. Okay? And when mind is coming into living creatures, the living creature is man. The mental creature is man. But he is not rejecting life. He is not rejecting the animal. It's an integration. We also have an animal life. We also have a body which is physical. So none of the lower stages are rejected. They are integrated.
But didn't Shankar accept this also?
Pardon?
Did Shankar accept this also?
No. The idea of integration is not there. The idea of integration is not clearly spelled out. But it is implied. It is implied but not worked out, like somebody is working it out. So this is what he is discussing. And then he is saying that evolution, when it proceeds from one level to another level, there seems to be a gulf. And sometimes the gulf is wide, sometimes the gulf is less wide. As you keep going higher and higher, the gulf seems to be deeper but less wide. We will see what he means by that. Okay? So, I am reading the summary of the previous paragraph. The physical and biological evolution has been observed and studied by Darwin. But the inner psychological evolution has not been evaluated at all. In the biological evolution of living forms, a continuity has been seen. This continuity is what is, you can say, integration.
Yes.
It is implied, but it is not clearly spelled out. Yet, from the consciousness point of view, the leap from grade to higher grade seems almost miraculous. How does matter become life? Matter is completely dead. And from where is life coming in? Is it involved or is it coming from outside and entering? That's a mystery. So, it seems to be a miracle. And how again does plant life become animal life? How does mental awareness come into sub-mental, unintelligent life? How does an animal become capable of thinking? Okay. These transitions seem impossible. However, if sufficiently scrutinized, perhaps the links in this inner development could be discovered. Still, the transitions do seem to be miracles of metamorphosis. This is what he said in the previous para. Now we read today's para. These gulfs appear deeper but less wide as we rise higher in the scale of nature. Now, it's a very small sentence, but he has got two problems there: deeper but less wide. So, what do we mean by that? So, deeper means the jump seems to be unbridgeable. For instance, between matter and life, there is a huge gap. So, that's a deep gulf. Matter is dead, life is living. Completely the opposite. But if you take two different species, less wide, take the species of cats and take the species of horses, there is a gulf between the two. There is a difference. But that difference is not as deep as before and less wide. It is less wide. It is wide but less wide. How? Because they have common elements. From matter to life, there is no common element. One is life, one is dead and one is life. So there it is, the gulf is very deep. But the gulf between, as I said, cats and dogs and horses is both have life in them. They have very many common elements. Four legs. So although there is a difference, that difference is not as wide as the other one. That's what he means by appear deeper but less wide. Okay? As you keep going higher and higher, the higher you go, the gulfs appear deeper but less wide. Okay? Take the difference animal and man. Okay? Both have life, so it is less wide, but it is deeper in this sense that the animal can't think, but man can think, have abstract notions. So gulf is deep but less wide because they have got common elements. That's what it means. Okay? If there are rudiments of life reaction in the metal, as has been recently contended, it may be identical with life reaction in the plant in its essence. But what might be called vital physical difference is so considerable that one seems to be inanimate. The other, though not apparently conscious, might be called a living creature. So, he is talking of the metal and life. Okay? The difference between the two. In one, there is inanimate, there is no life. And the other, though not apparently fully conscious like in the plant, might be called a living creature. There is birth, there is growth, and there is death in the plant.
But he says there is a life reaction in the metal.
Life reaction?
In the metal.
Yeah, that's right. It is implied.
Yes,
He's saying it is now contended.
Yes.
And in fact, that was proved by Jagadish Chandra Bose. he proved that he took electrodes and put into metal and passed a current. And the reaction of the current is put on an oscillograph. Okay? And the pattern is the same when you do that with metal and plant or muscle tissue. Also, the pattern is almost the same. So this proved that there is some sort of life even in the metal. Okay? And nowadays it's not uncommon. They speak even of metal fatigue. That's why metal fatigue can cause planes, motor cars to have accidents. Suddenly the crack develops. So some sort of life reaction is there even in metals. That's what he's saying. Okay? And there's a vital physical difference. So considerable that one seems to us inanimate, that's metal, and the other, though not apparently conscious, might be called a living creature, the tree or the plant life. You can call it a living creature. Why? Because there is birth, there is growth, and there is death. So, between the highest plant life and the lowest animal, the gulf is visibly deeper, for it is with the difference between mind and the entire absence of any apparent or even rudimentary movement of mind. So, between the highest plant life and the lowest animal. In the animal, there seems to be a consciousness which is capable of choosing and reacting. But the plant life does not seem to have any choice or a conscious mental reaction. That's what is meaning. Between the highest plant life and the lowest animal. Now, lowest animal, he is not considering.
No, the slug.
Yeah.
Or the worm.
Yeah. So, lower life forms, anything which can move and has got some element of choice. Okay. So, the gulf is visibly deeper. And why is that gulf deeper? For it is the difference between mind and the entire absence of any apparent or even rudimentary movement of mind. In the metal, there does not seem to be any movement of mind. But in the animal, there seems to be some mental element. There seems to be choice. There seems to be a reaction. There is a rejection and an acceptance. Some things which are pleasant, the animal accepts. Some things which are not pleasant, it reacts.
We see it more in the connection of animals with humans.
He will come to that later on. Yeah. So right now he is talking about the difference between the animals and the so between the plant life and the lowest animal, the gulf is visibly deeper because the plant doesn't think, but the animal can think. Very rudimentary thought, but it has a choice. Okay, so between the highest plant life and the lowest animal, the gulf is visibly deeper, for it is the difference between mind and the entire absence of any apparent or even rudimentary movement of mind. In the one, the stuff of mental consciousness is unawakened. In the metal, not the metal. In the metal it seems to be absent. In the plant. The mental consciousness is unawakened, though there is a life of vital reactions. Vital reactions are there in a plant. Okay. The lily closes and opens with the light. Okay. The leaves of many trees close at night. Okay. Then the mimosa plant reacts to your touch. So there are all these things are there, he is saying. Is unawakened, though there is a life of vital reactions, a suppressed or subconscious or perhaps only sub-mental sense vibration, which seems to be intensely active. So Srimati is saying life is much more intense in the plant life, but less intense in the animal. He said this earlier also. Because another element has come beyond life. When the mental develops in a living creature, the life element seems to become less important. So, in the plant life, there is no mind, there is only the life element, and that is very active. That's what he's saying. It is more intense in the plant than in the animal. Okay, so in the one, the stuff of mental consciousness is unawakened, that's a plant, though there is a life of vital reactions. The plant can react vitally. A suppressed or subconscious or perhaps only submental sense vibration, so they are saying it could be, perhaps, he's using the word perhaps, only submental sense vibration, which seems to be intensely active. There you are. In the other, though the life is at first less automatic and secure in the subconscious way of living, and in its own new way of overt consciousness imperfectly determined, still mind is awakened in the animal. There is a conscious life. In the plant, it's not a conscious life, it's an automatic life. That's the difference he's making between automatic and secure. The water is coming not by thought or by conscious will, it's coming automatically. Absorption of light is automatic. So that's what he means. But here in the animal, it is conscious. When it is thirsty, it seeks water. There is a conscious attempt. Okay? So when it is hungry, it seeks food. The plant is not seeking food. Automatically it is coming. That's what he means by automatic and secure, and the consciousness imperfectly determined. Still, mind is awakened. There is a conscious life. A profound transition has been made. So, profound suggests a deep gulf. But the community of the phenomenon of life between plant and animal, however different their organization, narrows the gulf, even though it does not fill in its profundity. Now, the word community here is used in a different sense. The community usually means a class of people living in a particular way. That's a community. The ashram community, the Auroville community, that's a community. But here he is using the word community in the sense of commonness. I checked also in the dictionary and it is there. Okay. Something which is common to everything. So you can replace the word. But the commonness of the phenomenon of life between plant and animal, however different their organization, narrows the gulf. That's why it is less wide. Okay? So, because there is something in common. Okay? Even though it does not fill in its profundity. Between the highest animal and the lowest man, there is a still deeper, though narrower gulf to be crossed. So, narrower gulf, why? Because the animal has got life and man also has got life. The animal has got a vital, man also has got a vital. But man has got a mind which the animal does not have. That's a gulf. But it is less deep. It is deep because it's, but less wide, because they have common elements. No? Clear? Okay, so he is using interesting words which you have to, what does he mean by deep gulf and less wide? So, as I said, the difference between cats and dogs and cat and horse, they are very different. So there is a gulf between them. But the difference is because both have got common elements, so it is less wide. But when there is an absolutely opposite, then it is deep. That's what it is meaning. Okay? Between the highest animal and the lowest man, there is still deeper, though narrower gulf to be crossed, the gulf between sense mind and the intellect. For, however we may insist on the primitive nature of the savage, we cannot alter the fact that the most primitive human being has, above and beyond the sense mind, emotional vitality and primary practical intelligence which we share with the animals, a human intellect, and is capable, in whatever limits, of reflection. The human intellect can have reflection, thinking, ideas, conscious invention. Conscious invention. Man can invent the radio, he can invent the mobile. The animal can't do that. Okay? So, religious and ethical thought and feeling. The animal has no religious and ethical thought or feeling. There is no ethics in the animal. The one animal can kill another animal, it's part of its life, there is no ethics there. Okay, but in a human being there is ethics, morality. So, religious and ethical thought and feeling, everything fundamental of which man as a race is capable. He has the same kind of intelligence, it differs only in its past instruction and formative training and the degree of its developed capacity, intensity, activity. Still, so, when you keep in mind the differences and the commonality, the more common elements, the less wide. The more the differences, not the common elements but new elements, then the gulf is wide. Okay? So, still, in spite of these dividing furrows, we can no longer suppose that God or some demiurge has manufactured each genus and species ready-made in body and in consciousness and left the matter there, having looked upon his work and seen that it was good. He is referring to the Christian theory. God looked at his creation and was happy, satisfied. There is a touch of irony here, there is no doubt about it. Okay, so having looked upon his work and seen that it was good, okay, he is satisfied. It has become evident that a secretly conscious or an inconscient energy of creation has effected the transition by swift or slow degrees, by whatever means, devices, biological, physical or psychological machinery, perhaps having made it, did not care to preserve as distinct forms what were only stepping stones and had no longer any function nor served any purpose in evolutionary nature. So, this explanation of gaps Sebner doesn't accept. But this explanation of the gaps is little more than a hypothesis which as yet we cannot sufficiently substantiate. It is probable, at any rate, that the reason for these radical differences is to be found in the working of the inner force and not in the outer process of the evolutionary transition. When we are seeing the gulfs and the widenesses, we are seeing only at the outer forms. But if you look into and see that there is a force which is working behind, then you can think of a connecting of all the links, all the grids can be connected. Otherwise they seem to be unconnected. Okay, that's what he's saying. If we look at it more deeply from that inner side, the difficulty of understanding ceases and these transitions become intelligible and indeed inevitable by the very nature of the evolutionary process and its principle. And what is that principle? Ascent and integrate. Ascent and integrate. The moment it is integrating, the gulf becomes less because the common elements. That's what is meaning. We'll read the summary of this one. Okay. This concept of the deeper gulf and less wide, we have given examples to understand what it is. Okay, so I'll read the summary of what he's saying here. The differences in nature of these grades becomes deeper but less wide as the ascent rises from one level to the next. It is possible, as recently found, that in the metal there are hidden traces of life reactions, metal fatigue, just as in plants. Okay. So, in metal also there are life reactions. Yet, the difference between plant and metal is so striking that one may say that the first is animate, alive, and the second is inanimate, dead. Again, between the highest plant, okay, the mimosa and the carnivorous plants, okay, they are all sensitive, highest plant, and lowest animal, the gap is glaring. Why? Because there is locomotion. Animals can move, the plants can't move. Okay? So that's glaring. The latter has conscious mental reactions, while the former has no visible mentality. The animal has got a conscious choice, whereas the plant has no conscious choice, it's automatic. Its hunger and its thirst is satisfied mechanically. That's the difference. So, and the lower animal is glaring. The latter has no conscious mental reaction, the plant, no conscious mental reaction. While the former, when Srimda is saying this, he is saying from the apparent point of view. You know that the plant also has got psychological reactions. We know that. There is fear, there is alarm in plants.
There's response to the pain of other plants.
Yes. So there is, but Srimda is here talking about the apparent outward look. And explaining, if you go to the inner, consciousness and force, then the gradation you will see there is a continuity. That's what he's saying. Here he's talking about only the outer forms. Okay, so how is it possible that Srimda did not know that plants have got sensitivity?
He talked about both. He did talk about both.
Yeah, he has.
He was aware.
Jagat Chandra Bose. Okay, so the latter has conscious mental reaction, while the former has no visible mentality. Next, the gulf between the highest animal and the lowest man is a vast difference in the quality of mentality. The animal can't think of philosophy, can't have morality, whereas the lowest man has got a concept of even God, higher forces. The savage has got. They worship rain, sun, moon. So this animal never does that. So there is a big gulf. That's what Srimad is pointing out. Okay, so the gulf between the highest animal and the lowest man is a vast difference in the quality of mentality. The animal has no rationality, no human emotionality, apparently, okay. No religious fervor. Man has what the animal does not possess. And what is that? Capacity of reflection, power of invention, morality, and religious sentiment. These things the animal does not have. Religious sentiment, certainly not. Morality, certainly not. Capacity of conceptions, can't. The animal doesn't have that. So the gulf is huge. That's what Srimad is pointing out. Okay, so the animal too has an intelligence, but man retains past developed capacity and can develop himself further. Thus, there is a commonality. Srimad used the word community in the sense of identity of character. And in the Oxford Dictionary, identity of character is community, and in the Webster Dictionary, common character, community. Okay, so. And yet, there is a deep gulf of difference between the highest animal and the lowest man. Man is capable of abstract thinking, some sort of original thinking, invention, and religious concepts. Even the lowest man, the savage man, has got religious concepts. He would worship the rain, he would worship the sun. Animism. So that is there. So this is what he has said is there. So, thus, evolution, with its continuity of development, contradicts the idea that God created beings fixed in nature and was satisfied with his own work. Whereas the idea of evolution is, no, there is a continuous growth and there is a connection between all the species. It's not unconnected. It's not that God produced all this at one time in unconnected way. Not that. Okay? What then is the common element to these varying grades? Okay? there is either a secret consciousness at work or an unconscious energy which affects these transitions by whatever means, physical, biological, psychological, and then has erased these intervening steps because it is considered not worth preserving. So, the gaps can be seen by nature has experimented and thrown away the interlinking stages. So, if you consider force or consciousness, then you will see that there is a continuity. That's what he's saying. Otherwise, it looks unconnected. Matter, life, and mind are all seem to be totally unconnected. Whatever the explanation for the gaps between the grades, the real reason must be found in the inner workings of a universal force or energy. You have to think that there is a universal force which is creating the evolution. Now we can go to the next one. So far clear. The word deeper gulf and less wide, you have to understand. Also you will see, if you go up, simply saying the gulf becomes deeper as you keep going up, but less wide. Take the ordinary man and a yogi. The gulf is huge. The yogi has got capacity which the normal man doesn't have. The gulf is huge, but less wide. Why? Because both are men. You follow? That's what they say. So as you keep going higher and higher, the gulf becomes more and more because of quality changes completely, but the forms are similar. Outer forms are similar, but the inner qualities are different. The same between a yogi and a supramental race. Because supramental race will have a body which is totally different from that of a yogi. So the higher you go, the gulf increases, but the wideness reduces. Very interesting discussion. Okay. Now I go to the next para. If we look not at the scientific or physical aspects, but at the psychological side of the question and inquire in what precisely the difference lies, we shall see that it consists in the rise of consciousness to another principle of being. Okay? So, the principle of being is matter, life, mind. But consciousness is common to all of them. The metal is fixed in the inconscient and inanimate principle of matter. Even if we can suppose that it has some reactions suggestive of life in it, or at least of rudimentary vibrations that in the plant developed into life, still it is not at all characteristically a form of life. Metal is not form of life normally speaking. It is characteristically a form of matter. It is more matter than life. Any metal is more matter than life. Life is there hiding. Okay. So the idea of the involution also comes in here. Even in matter there is supermind, but it is hiding. Okay, so the plant is fixed in a subconscious action of the principle of life. Not that it is not subject to matter or devoid of reactions that find their full meaning only in mind, for it seems to have submental reactions that in us are the foundation of pleasure and pain or of attraction and repulsion. There you are. He's talking of that. No? So, the plant has got reactions which is the foundation of pleasure and pain or attraction and repulsion. The plant. But still, it's a form of life, not of mere matter. Nor is it, so far as we know, at all, a mind-conscious being. So very clearly Swami is saying that the plant has got reactions, pleasure and pain it can feel. But there doesn't seem to be any mind in it. Okay, so man and animal are both mentally conscious beings. But the animal is fixed in vital mind and sense mind. Sense mind is the manas. The vital mind, that's a sense mind, the vital mind. And cannot exceed its limitations. while man has received into his sense mind the light of another principle, the intellect, which is really at once a reflection and a degradation of the supermind. So, mind, simply is saying, is a reflection of supermind and yet is a degradation. Okay, so a ray of gnosis seized by the sense mentality and transformed by it into something other than its source. For it is agnostic, like the sense mind, in which and for which it works, not gnostic. Now, the word agnostic has got several meanings. The word agnostic, when you say, oh, that man is an agnostic, that means he is a non-believer. Normally it means he is a non-believer.
Or not really knowing.
Yeah, that's that other meaning. That he does not know. Okay, that shades of meanings are there. Like the sense mind in which for it works, not Gnostic. It seeks to lay hold on knowledge because it does not possess it. It does not, like supermind, hold knowledge in itself as its natural prerogative. It has to seek for knowledge. In other words, in each of these forms of existence, the universal being has fixed its action of consciousness in a different principle, or, as between man and animal, in the modification of a lower by a higher, though still not a highest grade principle. So in both there is consciousness, but it is not yet reached the highest consciousness. In the animal there is consciousness, in man there is a consciousness but of a different grade, but the highest consciousness, as in a yogi, has not yet come. Okay, so it is this stride from one principle of being to another, quite different principle of being, that creates the transitions, the furrows, the sharp lines of distance, and makes not all the difference, but still a radical characteristic difference between being and being in their nature. So he is saying that the consciousness is there hiding behind all, but the outer form, there seems to be a jump. I'll read the summary of this one. Okay. So Serdar said that if you look from the energy point of view or the consciousness point of view, you will see that there is a continuity. He has said that very clearly. Now he is saying, if there is a hidden continuity among the various levels, what is common to all of them? It is to be found in the rise of consciousness. The metal is inconscient, inanimate, even if the primary vibrations of life are dimly present. These life stirrings become visible in plant life. It lives, the plant. It is born, it grows, develops and dies. The plant is subconscious life. Again, the plant does not seem to have reactions of attraction. Again, the plant does seem to have reactions of attraction and repulsion, which in animal and man become pleasure and pain, liking and disliking. But in the plant, although there is pleasure and pain, liking and disliking is not there. Okay? Apparently. Both man and animal are mentally conscious. The latter is fixed in physical and vital mind, while man has reason, which is at once both reflection and degradation of the principle of supermind. So, the animal has got only vital mind, practical mind. It only seeks, can't think, or can't have higher capacity of thought. But mind in man is ignorant. It seeks knowledge but does not possess it, like the supermind. Thus, it is consciousness which is common to all grades and is constantly growing in stature, capacity, luminosity. It is this that creates a gulf between the ascending grades. Consciousness is there, but it is taking the form of matter is consciousness, life is consciousness, mind is consciousness, supermind is consciousness, but different grades. Somewhat like ice, water, water vapor. Seem to be totally different. And yet there is a difference between them. There is a commonality between them. This consciousness is taking different grades. Okay, so we go to the next para. We
Yes,
have time,
ma'am.
no?
Yes, we do.
Okay. But it must be observed. Yeah.
Yes.
But it must be observed that this ascent, this successive fixing in higher and higher principles, does not carry with it the abandonment of the lower grades. There you are. It's not rejecting the lower grades, it is taking up. In other words, even when the supramental body comes, it will be a physical body. It's interesting if you think about it. It will be physical but with different qualities. Just as matter is substance. Okay? The animal also has substance but life injected into it. It's different. So you can call that lifed matter. Then similarly in man you have mentalized matter. Your brain is mentalized matter. Your muscle can't think. It is life matter. But your brain is capable of thought. It is matter which is capable of thought. So it is matter, mentalized matter, just as a muscle is vitalized matter. So why can't you have a spiritualized matter? That will be the supramental body. That's what he's saying. There is an ascent. That word integration is so important. Now you can understand. Even the supramental body will be material, but of a different quality. So, it does not carry with it the abandonment of the lower grades any more than a status of existence in the lower grades means the entire absence of the higher principles. He is saying that even in the lower grades, the higher grades are there. There is involution. That's the idea of involution. Okay? This heals the objection against the evolutionary theory created by these sharp lines of difference. For if the rudiments of the higher are present in the lower creation and the lower characters are taken up into the higher evolved being, that of itself constitutes an indubitable evolutionary process. So this idea is not there in the Charles Darwin. This idea is not there. That there is a common element to this consciousness and so there is a continuity. That is not there. Are taken up into the higher evolved being and of itself constitutes an indubitable, without doubt, evolutionary process. What is necessary is a working that brings the lower gradation of being to a point at which the higher can manifest in it. At that point, a pressure from some superior plane where the new power is dominant may assist towards a more or less rapid and decisive transition by a bound or a series of bounds. A slow, creeping, imperceptible or even occult reaction is followed by a run and an evolution is saltus across the border. It is in some such way that the transition from the lower to higher grades of consciousness seems to have been made in nature. So what he's saying is very interesting. He's saying that all matter is not capable of life. The stone is not capable of life. But mud is capable of life. Life can appear in some forms of matter where there is the possibility. Similarly, from mud, all plants can't come out. Some plants will come out. Okay. Exactly in the same way, all animals have not evolved from the plant. Okay. Some only. So this way it goes on up and up and up. And that's what I'm saying. There is series. So one has to develop, one lower grade has to develop sufficiently so that it spills over onto the next. That's what he's saying. Now this concept is very important and very interesting when you think of how the supramental body will descend. There is an idea that the supramental body is being prepared even in the subtle field. And it can precipitate into the physical. We know that materialization is possible. Because until now, the bodies have been built in a biological way. But how will the supramental body appear? Will it come by precipitation or how will it come? So this is one idea that in fact, one well-known author, I forget his name, he has spoken about this and says that mother's work of preparing the body, the work has been done right up to the subtle physical.
Yes.
Shrevdo also speaks of the precipitation of the supramental body into the material. He speaks of that in the supramental manifestation. So this whole idea is very interesting. Okay, but here he is talking only from the lower grades, but the higher grades also same principle will be there. Okay. What is necessary is a working that brings the lower gradation of being to a point at which the higher can manifest in it. At that point, a pressure from some superior plane where the new power is dominant may assist towards a more or less rapid and decisive transition by bound or a series of bounds. A slow creeping, imperceptible or even occult action is followed by a run and an evolutionary saltus, a jump saltus, across the border. It is in some such way that the transition from the lower to higher grades of consciousness seems to have been made in nature. Again we read the summary of what he is saying. It is to be clearly noticed that in this ascent from the lower to the higher, the latter does not reject and abandon the lower. Also, the lower contains the potentiality of the higher. This fact answers to the objection against evolution, which holds that the difference between grades is so vast and sharp that continuity is contradicted. Okay. So, but if you take this idea of the ascent and integration, the continuity is bound to be there. The inherence of the higher in the lower is what the evolutionary process truly is. What happens is that the higher hidden in the lower keeps developing slowly and invisibly until it is ready to burst into the higher, much like the chicken and the egg. Okay? You look at the egg, it doesn't seem to be moving at all, but the preparation is going on inside. In matter also, the preparation for life is going on, and when it is time for it, it bursts out. Okay, that's what he's saying. Okay? A slow preparation is followed by a sudden, brisk leap into the next level. This seems to be nature's method. In fact, life, mind and supermind are present in the atom, are at work there, but invisible, occult, latent in a subconscious or apparently unconscious action of the energy. There is an informing spirit. The word informing, a favorite word of those, going into the form, not information in that sense. Okay, so forming, going into the form is informing spirit. The spirit is entering into the form. But the outer force and figure of being, what we might call the formal or form existence, as distinguished from the immanent or secretly governing consciousness, is lost in the physical action, is so absorbed into it as to be fixed in a stereotyped self-oblivion, unaware of what it is and what it is doing. The electron and atom are in this view eternal somnambulists, half awake, half sleeping. Each material object contains an outer or form consciousness involved, absorbed in the form, asleep, seeming to be an unconsciousness driven by an unknown and unfelt inner existence. He who is awake in the sleeper, the universal inhabitant of the Upanishads. Okay, so an outer absorbed form consciousness which, unlike that of the human somnambulist, has never been awake and is not always or ever on the point of waking. In the plant, this outer form consciousness is still in the state of sleep, but a sleep full of nervous dreams. Beautiful. Always on the point of waking, but never waking. Life has appeared. In other words, force of concealed conscious being has been so much intensified in matter, has raised itself to such a height of power as to develop or become capable of a new principle of action, that which we see as vitality, life force. It has become vitally responsive to existence, though not mentally aware, and has put forth a new grade of activities of a higher and subtler value than any purely physical action. At the same time, it is capable of receiving and turning into these new life values into motions and phenomena of a vibration of vitality, life contacts and physical contacts from other forms than its own and from universal nature. This is a thing which forms of mere matter cannot do. They cannot turn contacts into life values or any kind of value, partly because their power of reception, although it exists, if occult evidence is to be trusted, is not sufficiently awake to do anything but dumbly receive and imperceptibly react, partly because the energies transmitted by the contacts are too subtle to be utilized by the crude, inorganic density of formed matter. Life in the tree is determined by its physical body, but it takes up the physical existence and gives it a new value or system of values, the life value. So, he has told us very clearly that life is being prepared in matter, and when it comes to a certain pitch where it is now ready to jump, it jumps into the next. In the animal, mentality is being prepared slowly until it becomes capable of jumping into the human form. The yogic capacities are also slowly being developed in man, and when it is ready, it can be a jump into a yogic life. So, I read the summary and we will close it today. But this summary will include the next one also. In the same way, the secret inherent force with increasing intensity reaches a breaking point and mentality is born. The animal can do things which the plant cannot. The animal is aware of its existence, its own and that of others, which the plant can't. Its activities are more numerous, mental, vital, physical. It develops senses, sight, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, which the plant can't. It has instincts which have secret nature's automatic guidance, but it also has memory, willings, emotions, feelings. I am expanding on the idea to make it clearer. The animal has cunning, intelligence, planning. It adapts to new circumstances. The animal is nature's laboratory in which it experiments and prepares human intelligence. So you can see that cunning and planning is there also in animals, but it is dormant. As you said, one plant can warn the other plants that there is a danger coming. So simple thing. We stop here.
Good. Yes. Thank you, Ranga.
Very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. So next week, on Monday, we will begin on page 741.
Yeah.
Namaste all. Namaste. Thank you for joining us. We'll continue with the evolutionary process, ascent and integration.